I didn't find the check in a drawer or in her purse. It was in the silverware tray, half tucked under the serving spoons like it had tried to hide itself and got tired. Thanksgiving night. The house smelling like butter and rosemary and the cousin's green bean casserole that always breaks into soup. I reached for the carving fork and touched paper. Late night catering, Jake's Kitchen, printed neat as a parking ticket. 1:15 a.m., 2 personal pizzas, side salad, tiramisu, a bottle of sparkling water. Delivery address, our address, our address. The promise she had made me when she joined the weight loss group was that accountability would save us both. She would stop grazing through the pantry. I would stop drinking through the fights. We would stop being the way we'd been since the pandemic, when the months had been long and cheap beer was cheaper than therapy. I believed her. I wanted to believe anything that meant quiet. But a check in our silverware tray at 1:15 in the morning is not quiet. It hums even when the dishwasher is off. My nephew solved the mystery I didn't have the courage to ask about. He was 6 and sugared up and honest. After the pies had been massacred and the game was lulling the living room into football naps, he stood on a chair with one sock on and announced to the adults that Aunt Amy and Mr. Jake had eaten pizza on the floor last night. He said it like it was a magic trick. He'd woken up for water, he said, and the light under our door made a line on the hallway carpet. He saw boxes. He heard laughing. Then he wanted pizza and his mom said no because it was bedtime. Everyone laughed that strained way families do when a child throws a live wire into the room. Amy, to her credit, didn't try to laugh. She went into the kitchen and started washing a clean bowl. I'm a truck driver, which is to say I'm a man who makes a living from miles and a heartbeat that stays steady while those miles pass. I've driven in whiteouts that look like static. I've driven through nights so flat and black, the only proof of the world is the rattle in the door seals. You develop a habit of inventory, mirrors, gauges, fuel. The inventory of my house started then. 2 pizza boxes folded flat and slid into the recycling under the catalogs. A cardboard ring from a box of sparkling water tucked behind the trash can. A basil smell where there should have been nutmeg. My hands kept finding the check in my pocket like it was magnetic. When the dishes were done and the last of my family had been hugged into their coats and drifted to their cars, I pulled the check from my pocket and laid it on the counter. The kitchen light was too bright. The numbers looked like they were sweating. "It's for the group," she said instantly. "We had a late meeting. Jake covered it and I reimbursed. You know how he is about receipts." "Delivered here," I said. "We did meal planning," she said. "We used the living room because the table had projects on it." "Rick, I can't control where a delivery driver writes the address. He called me because it was past midnight and the storefront was closed. He brought it here and I brought it back." She was good at sounding tired. She had learned that sounding tired could be truer than sounding angry. It bent the conversation toward mercy. I looked at her, and behind her shoulder, I saw our kids' chore chart, the sticker star slightly crooked where my daughter always pressed too hard. The room had the soft, sick ache that comes from realizing you might be the only person in it worrying about what it actually is. "It was 2 pizzas," I said, "and dessert, and water. Not 10 boxes for a group." "We were 4, she said. "Small group. It's Thanksgiving week. People travel." "My nephew saw you," I said. "He said you were sitting on the floor." "A 6-year-old saw adults sitting on the floor," she said. "That's the crime?" The old me would have opened a beer, because there are sentences that need something in your hand so you don't put your fist through a wall. The new me opened the fridge and stared into it until the cold made tears threaten for an unrelated reason. The carved turkey sat on a platter like a deflated balloon. I closed the door. "We're not doing this tonight," she said softly. "Please, it's Thanksgiving." I sleep like a man who thinks he's being watched by a border agent. I look calm. My mind checks documents. At 3:30, I woke up in the spare room because I wanted space more than I wanted blankets, and because our daughter was starfished across our bed the way she always ends up after holidays. There were two whispers from downstairs. I went to the top of the stairs and listened. The dishwasher was humming. Nothing else. The whispers were in my head, telling me things I already knew. The first escalation came quietly, the way ice creeps on the river. The next morning, while the house yawned and the kids negotiated over the pie leftovers for breakfast, my phone buzzed an alert from our credit union. Large transfer from 529 college savings. It was a completely unromantic series of words. I opened the app right there in front of the toaster. $5,000 moved into our joint checking 2 days ago. The trail had the neatness of crime scenes designed by people who don't think they've committed one. From the 529 to checking, to a cashier's check number listed in the memo field, and a photo of the check saved in the app's neat little gallery of our fiscal life. Pay to the order of Jake Stanford. Memo. Equipment loan. I became that statue in the museum that kids tickle to see if it's real. Heat pooled at the back of my neck. I stood in the doorway to the hall and watched Amy put on her winter boots like her feet were not the feet of a person who had emptied money we'd saved since our daughter was born. Back when I worked the night route to Pittsburgh twice a week so we could shovel $50 extra a pay period into a future where my kid might need housing and books and that thing called a meal plan that I always imagined as a buffet that never closes. My mouth worked around the air for words. You took $5,000 from the college fund, I said. She looked at me, then at my phone, then at the kids. Can we not? You took $5,000 from the college fund, I said, and you paid Jake with a cashier's check. Loan, she said. He needed equipment. He's been a huge support for me. This is temporary. That money isn't your support fund, I said. It's college. For our kid. Remember her? The small one with the sticker addiction? It's an investment, she said. And then she caught herself because it sounded bad, because it was bad. He's paying back with interest. The interest you're getting is pizza at 1 a.m, I said. You want return on investment. Check your calorie tracker. How is this not insane to you? My daughter asked if insane was a bad word. I told her it was a grown-up word for when you love someone and they make decisions like a raccoon in a jewelry store. And I immediately wished I hadn't said it. And Amy's mouth did the flat line it does when she is withholding everything I don't deserve to hear. We pretended to go about a day. The holiday black hole swallows the hours between Thanksgiving and that Saturday, like a drain you can't quite unclog. I took the kids to Edgewater Beach because they like throwing rocks at an unforgiving body of water, and the wind off the lake smelled like metal, and seagulls strutted like they were unionized. I texted my sister, who works in a small law office in Ohio City, and she called me back so fast I almost drove off the road. What did she do, she asked. Not even, how are you? Not even happy Thanksgiving. I told her. My sister has never liked Amy because my sister has never liked anyone I dated, or kept, or married. She is the cynic who volunteers. She is the distillery of bad news. You need to document it, she said. You need to not drink. You need to stop trying to win arguments with sentences. Collect things that can be stapled. I'm not a binder, I said. You are today, she said. Text me the check image. Text me the 529 screenshot. Do not confront at the restaurant. He can say you threatened him. Stay quiet. Make a list. Come to me Monday. We'll see our guy. Our guy meant a lawyer who wore suits that looked slept in and won cases by talking slowly, which appealed to me because I drive for a living and slow speech sounds like a highway that goes the right direction. That night, after the kids went to bed, I decided I would check one thing, the kind of thing you check when you think maybe knowing will stop the buzzing in your teeth. We had a Nest camera pointed at the front porch because packages go missing on our street the way ghosts go missing in haunted houses, constantly, noisily, with much telling. The camera has a motion history, a small digital timeline of who we really are when we think we are alone. The Thursday before Thanksgiving, at 1:13 a.m., the timeline showed a person-sized blob approach our porch. The thumbnail, when it opened, showed the shaved head and blocky shoulders of a man in a black jacket. He balanced two boxes on one forearm and leaned into the frame. The label on the top box was a cartoon pepper wearing sunglasses. He knocked with the knuckle bone of his little finger. The door opened. Amy appeared in a sweatshirt. She smiled at him, the way you smile at someone you've seen enough times to not think about smiling. She took the boxes. He said something and pointed at the hinge of the storm door and laughed. She laughed, head tipped back, throat exposed the way you do with people who you do not fear. She put her foot in the door, and he slid a receipt across the threshold on the palm of his hand like a magician palming a coin. The video ended in a gray blur when the door closed. I replayed it twice. The second time, I watched my own face reflected in the laptop screen while the ghostly version of my wife accepted food like it was nothing. If I spoke, even to myself, I don't remember what I said. The next escalation came with a voice, not an app. Sunday afternoon, a woman from Amy's weight loss group messaged me on Facebook, a platform I use like a pantry for memes I'm ashamed to laugh at. We had never spoken directly. She said she was sorry to reach out but thought I should know some things because she would want to know if it were her. She said that Jake is generous with time and cheap with money. She said he had borrowed from a couple of members for equipment and had been very charming about repayment schedules that he seemed to conceive of as aspirational. She said it wasn't her business to gossip, but the group had seen Amy and Jake arrive together to the storefront more than once and leave much later than the meeting ended. She said people had eyes and weren't blind. She used a row of ellipses in place of sentences too impolite to write. I asked if she would be willing to say that to a lawyer. She said she would if she had to, but she wasn't trying to get dragged into a fight. She said she liked me and my kids and wanted us to be okay. She wanted me to know that it wasn't all in my head. I told her I appreciated it. I use the word appreciate, like a person who knows polite language will be a breadcrumb trail later. Sunday night, I did the thing I do when I don't want to drink and don't want to sleep, which is clean. I took apart the toaster the way an archaeologist sifts sand. I wiped the backsplash behind the stove until it squeaked. I found, under the couch, a receipt for a massage place I didn't know we could afford. 60 minutes, hot stones, last Friday, Amy's name spelled correctly. I found, in the laundry hamper, a sweatshirt that smelled faintly of garlic and the citrusy aftersmell of good dish soap that restaurants use because consumer brands don't cut grease that clings like heartbreak. I did not confront her with any of it. That was the old me's sport. The new me was assembling a spine out of stapled paper. Monday morning, I drove not to the terminal but to my sister's office. I am always amazed by how desks make bad news seem legitimate. I sat in a chair that had threatened backs for decades and slid what I had across the laminate. The lawyer, whose name is Carl, and whose patience has the weathered softness of a well-used jacket, looked through the stack. He asked me to tell it concisely. I told it. He made a couple of notes in a neat hand that makes juries trust you. Then he leaned back and steepled his fingers like the movies taught me lawyers do when they are thinking about how to ruin you. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want to not feel crazy," I said. "That's for therapists," he said. "Legally. I want my kids," I said. "I want my money back in the college fund." "That," he said, "is where we live." He sent me to the credit union for certified statements. He told me to request a formal transaction history for the 529. He told me to not speak to Jake at all. He told me to not do theatrics in the group meeting, in public, in the restaurant, on Facebook, or at the school. He told me the boring things that save people. He said we would file for temporary custody on the basis of financial instability and dissipation of marital assets. He said it more gently than that phrase deserves. When I got home, Amy was in the kitchen making a salad, like, salads have absolved anyone. There is something cruel about lettuce when your life is this messy. I met with a lawyer, I said. I didn't wait for a time when the kids were out of the room. They were both in the den arguing about the last slice of pecan pie and whether dividing it into equal parts meant half for each or half for one and half for the doll. They already live in a world with math and disappointment. I respect them enough to tell the truth in rooms they can overhear, because lying in whispers teaches kids how to lie loud later. Amy put the knife down. She closed her eyes like lids would make sound go away. "Rick," she said, "please! Can we talk before you?" "You borrowed from the college fund to give your sponsor money," I said. "You lie about food at 1 in the morning. You tell me it's for your health when it's for his tips." "There wasn't sex," she said. The sentence was a flinch. "Not then." There is a special sound rooms make when the thing itself crosses the threshold and sits down in a chair like it's always belonged. I held the back of a dining chair because I needed something wooden under my hand. "Not then," I repeated. "I made a mistake," she said. He helped me. I got confused about gratitude. He needed a new walk-in. I told him I could help because we are a family and we help people. He said he would pay it back by Christmas. We kissed. It was, I'm ashamed. "And the other times?" I asked. "The nights you were meal planning with him?" She straightened her spine like she had to hold more than one thing upright. "It got physical," she said. "I'm not proud. It made me feel seen. I felt like a refrigerator in this house, humming in the background, expected to work, noticed only when I break." "I have stopped drinking," I said. "I did that to see you." "You stopped drinking to stop a fight," she said. "You stopped because you got scared of the person you might be. I am not a prize for your sobriety." I could have thrown plates. I could have broken the nice wine glasses we never touch because good things sometimes make poor people angry. I didn't. I picked up the salad bowl and set it in the sink and turned on the water and let it fill until oil beaded into rainbows. "You need to move out," I said. "We'll sort custody formally. The money goes back into the 529. If he can't pay it back, you will." "With what?" she asked. "The moral high ground?" "You have a college degree and 2 hands," I said. "Same as me." "You barely graduated high school," she said. In that sharp way you only throw at people you've loved because you know where the joints are. "Don't make this a merit badge race." I nodded like I was listening to something other than the words. "I'm filing today," I said. "You can stay with your sister. The kids will stay here to keep school consistent. If you want to fight that, we can let a judge decide." She stared at me like she wanted me to suddenly be someone I had never been. She looked small. I did not hug her. There are tendernesses that turn to poison if you give them after a certain point. The next thing that changed the stakes did not happen in our house. It happened at the group meeting that night, the one she went to because she said she wasn't going to hide even if I was going to make things ugly. I did not go. I am not a man who stands up in front of strangers and reads receipts like scripture, but people text like breathing. My phone buzzed with a message from the same woman who had messaged me Sunday. 6 words. "It's getting messy in here. Wow." Later, I would get a play-by-play from 2 different members who couldn't decide which one of them hated drama more. There had been a discussion about boundaries between sponsors and members. Someone had said that couples shouldn't co-sponsor each other. Someone else had said that sometimes people really connect. Another person, a man who had lost 70 pounds and gained a spine, stood up and said that connection isn't a loan program and that ethics don't change because you can see your feet now. And then someone used the word affair, and someone else used the word predatory, and Jake said quietly that he did not appreciate litigious language. Amy stood up and said she would take responsibility for her choices and that not everything nasty can be laid on the man. I can imagine her voice. Once, I loved that voice. It could call our kids in from the yard with such warmth it made the inside of our house look like a painting of a kitchen you want to be in. By the end of the meeting, Amy had been asked to take a break. That was the phrase. Take a break. It means you have been asked to leave. She texted me from the parking lot to say it was done. I did not respond to say I was sorry. I saved the text in a folder I was starting to call evidence, even though it made my stomach churn to turn my life into a word lawyer's like. On Tuesday, the credit union gave me certified statements, which is accountant language for weapon. The teller, who knows me by first name and points at my hat when I forget it on the counter, asked how the kids were. People's kindness is jet fuel for crying. I swallowed it and smiled. I asked if I could also get a copy of the check image on printed paper. She gave it to me in a little folder, the color of a bruise. I went to Carl's office and handed him the folder like a communion tray. He scanned and nodded and didn't look pleased, because lawyers don't pleasure themselves with other people's bad news. They look like weather, and then they act like roads. He said he could file Wednesday morning for temporary custody and a restraining order on the 529 account so that any future movement would require dual signatures and court notice. He asked if I wanted to pursue any criminal claim regarding the check. I said no. I said I wanted my money back and my kids stable. He said that was wise. Wise means boring, and this is the only arena where boring is a superpower. That afternoon, I drove to Jake's restaurant because I am human. I parked 2 blocks away because men who are trying to be good people taught themselves into being thoughtful while they are doing impulsive things. The air smelled like fryer oil and snow. Cleveland in late November has a way of making you see people as animals in coats looking for a door that's still unlocked. I stood across the street and watched through the fogged window as Jake leaned over the counter in a clean apron, joking with a delivery driver I recognized from the Nest video. He was good looking, in that way men get after a long midlife of pretending they aren't. The lines around his eyes breaking nicely, the jaw not trying too hard. He laughed at something the driver said and then put his hand on a receipt spike like he was touching a talisman. I wanted to throw a brick. I wanted to run in and name things. Instead, I took a picture of the storefront with the paper hours taped crookedly to the glass. It felt like naming, and it didn't break anything. When I got home, Amy was in the living room with a duffel bag. She had packed badly, which is how you know a person is leaving and not going. Leaving is socks and a sweater, and that sweater's enemy sweater. Going is folded things. She said she would stay at her sister's, which is 4 exits down the highway and 3 decades older than our house. She said she wanted to talk to the kids together. We sat them on the couch and used the language the internet gives you. We said we loved them. We said the grown-up stuff was complicated and not their fault. We said they would sleep at home with me and see mom often, and that this could change if a judge told us it needed to. We were honest enough to be offensive, and that counts for something in a world where adults specialize in the anesthesia of half-truths. Our son asked if Christmas would still happen. Our daughter asked if we could still make hot chocolate on the stove. We said yes to both because grief is easier to metabolize when sugar is involved. Wednesday morning, we filed. The temporary custody recommendation came back faster than I expected because the holiday week made everything both slower and more immediate. The judge wasn't the hard kind or the soft kind. He was the kind that read. He asked 2 questions over Zoom, which made the courtroom look like a call-in show, and then he signed an order that said the kids would stay with me in the house and Amy would have parenting time twice a week plus weekends alternating. He signed that the 529 account would be frozen to both of us without court notice. He signed that marital funds should not be transferred to third parties without mutual consent. That night, in the quiet that sometimes feels like punishment, I stood in the kitchen and opened the cabinet over the fridge where I used to keep a bottle for bad nights. I looked at the space. I closed it. I poured a glass of water and drank it at the sink because I didn't trust myself to sit with it at the table. The next escalation waited until I thought I understood what direction the world was turning. The credit union called me Thursday morning to tell me that a deposit had hit the frozen account. $3,000. Reference, Stanford Equip repayment. 1. I stared at the phone like it had barked. Jake had sent money back. Not all of it, but a chunk. The teller said the freeze allowed deposits, not withdrawals. I said good, that the freeze was a jar with a lid I liked. I hung up and, against my own rule, texted Amy. He paid some back, I wrote. She replied almost instantly. I told him he had to. He said he would have all of it by mid-December. I wrote back, mid-December isn't a bank. She wrote, I know. 2 repayments came over the next 10 days, each one oddly precise, as if he'd cashed out something small to make the numbers. 750, 1,000. The balance in the 59 crept toward where it had been, and some animal part of me that responds to numbers calmed a degree. I still went to the lawyer. I still didn't go for a drink. The weight loss group did what groups do when drama appears like a deer in a bright yard. It looked around and decided whether to run or pretend nothing was happening. Half the members took a break. Half kept going with eyes averted but ears entirely present. Amy went to 2 meetings at a church basement across town where no one had a history with her face. She said they were kind in that careful way that feels like the opposite of close. She said she felt like a person who had to introduce herself as a mistake. I didn't offer sympathy, because sympathy in the wrong place can feel like a loan with interest. The confrontation I had been avoiding came. Finally, not with Jake, but with my father-in-law, who came to my house on a Sunday afternoon with a bag of apples and the look of a man measuring whether to be gentle or stern. He is a man who believes in solving things with the right size wrench and a well-placed silence. He sat at my table and polished an apple on his sleeve like we lived in a fable, and said that he had taught his daughter to be better than this, and that he had also taught me to have a backbone, and he wanted to see which of his teachings would win. I told him I had filed. I told him I was not making a mess in public. I told him the money was coming back. He nodded. He put the apple back in the bag for reasons I did not understand. He said he was sorry for his daughter and proud of me, and sorry for the grandchildren, and proud of them too, because they were handling their parents like little saints. I won't be ugly, he said, which was his way of saying he could be, if I was. I told him I appreciated it. He shook my hand like it was a rung on the ladder. There is a point in every story where inertia breaks. Your life has been rolling in one direction with the power of a good hill, and then some small decision becomes a lever, and you are moving somewhere else whether or not you think you are ready. For me, that point was a Saturday morning when I was due on a run to Columbus. I stood on the porch with the kids' backpacks packed for their overnight at Amy's sister's and watched my son stuff a paperback into the pocket like it was contraband. Amy pulled up in a car that wasn't hers. It was Jake's. I recognized the dent over the rear wheel from my photo. She got out, saw me see the car, and flinched. I don't have mine, she said. It's in the shop. Of course it is, I said, because sometimes you have to hand a sentence to the witch in the room so she stops asking for your soul. The kids climbed in. They did what they always do when they are being good. For the worst reasons, they went quiet. Amy touched my arm and said she was sorry. It wasn't the first sorry. It wasn't even the 10th. It was the first one that felt like it was for her and not at me. Don't bring him to the house, I said. Don't bring him around the kids. I won't, she said. I'm not that person. You are exactly that person, I said. But you don't have to be forever. She looked like she'd been shot with a small dart. She nodded. She drove away like the car belonged to a ghost. I went inside and sat on the edge of the couch and let myself shake the way I won't in front of the kids. I did not open a bottle. I opened the notebook where I was keeping the dates and the amounts and the times and the names of who had said what, because writing it down is how I don't drown. In mid-December, Jake made the last big repayment. The 529 account showed the exact number it had shown before she turned it into confetti. Carl filed the paperwork noting restitution and asking the court to consider that while money had been returned, the dissipation had happened. The breach of trust was not a line item, and parental stability still argued for me. The hearing date got set for January. Christmas happened like a performance you put on for critics you want to spare. We made cocoa. We watched a movie where families fix our kids adjusted like kids do when the adults don't force them to hold our broken pieces. The legal thing settled the way snow in Cleveland settles, completely. Then, not at all. Then, completely again. Custody split in a way that made us both mad and both grateful. The house went to me because stability is a word judges like more than romance. Amy moved into an apartment near her sister that smelled like new paint and old carpet. Jake faded from the repayments into a rumor. The weight loss group replaced him with a new leader who used more spreadsheets and fewer promises. Amy was not welcome back after the holiday break. They said she could try in the spring if she was serious. Groups forgive slower than churches. In late January, after a day of driving that made my eyes feel like dry leaves, I pulled into the driveway and sat there with the engine ticking and watched the house's front light on a timer pretending we were all still in there together. My phone buzzed. It was Amy. She asked if she could talk. I said yes because I'm not a monster, and because saying no is a different kind of yoke, and I had chosen enough weights already. She came over in a coat that made her look like a child. She stood in the doorway with her hands in her pockets and looked at the banister like it was going to ask her a question. We sat at the table where the check had first accused us of being who we were. "I'm sorry," she said. Again, but this time she threaded it with something that was not a request. "I told my sister I was a cliché." She said I was a person who was tired of being the solution and made myself the problem. I asked my therapist what that means. She asked me if I knew how to be anything other than helpful. I said no. I still don't. "I'm not here to diagnose you," I said. "I'm here to not be married to you." She nodded. She traced a circle on the table with her finger, then pulled her hand back like even pretending to draw made her nervous. "I ruined the group for me," she said. "They asked me to leave and the ones who were kind looked at their shoes. I see how they were protecting themselves. People don't hold on to each other if they think the rope is rotted. I am trying not to be angry at the rope. I wanted to tell you that." "Are you still seeing him?" I asked. "No," she said. "He's not a villain in his mind. He's a man who needed things and asked and took. I am a woman who wanted to be needed and said yes and paid. We are both ugly if you look long enough. I don't like looking. I am forcing myself to." "Good," I said, "for the kids." "For me," she said, "and for whoever I am when I'm not trying to be needed." We were quiet for a long time. Snow hit the window like the world was tap dancing. "I want you to know," I said carefully, "that when I found the check, I wanted to break every plate we own. I wanted to drink until my ears were quiet. I didn't. I went to a lawyer. I filed papers. I organized my anger into a folder. It felt like being a coward. It turns out it was the bravest thing I've done." She smiled in that sad way where you can see all the photos of the life you thought you were building in the corners of the smile. "I'm glad," she said. "The kids need that man." "So do I said, surprising both of us. We signed the final papers in February. The clerk in the courthouse had a bowl of peppermint candies on the counter like a joke about small mercies. We each took one. We went to separate cars. We drove to separate lives. I still drive at night sometimes on routes that swing out past the lake and bring me back down into the city. I still inventory things when the dark presses its hand to the window. The gauge of my heart, the load of my anger, the brightness of the porch camera when a package lands in a ring of light. I still think about that pizza at 1 in the morning. The way laughter looks different when it isn't yours. The way a check can sit under a spoon and change a life. Here is what I know now that I didn't know then. Betrayal isn't a thunderclap. It's a bank transfer with a memo line and a laugh in a doorway, and the way the house smells like basil when it should smell like nutmeg. It's double when it's body and money. It's a debt you pay twice if you're not careful, once with your savings, once with your rage. I did not choose revenge, because revenge is a sugar high you pay for in sick. I chose a lawyer. I chose the boring power of forms. I chose silence in rooms where I used to perform. I chose my kids. I choose them every morning when I make their lunches and every night when I turn on the porch light and lock the door. I choose them when I look at the 529 account and see numbers that look like a promise kept by someone tired and serious. I am not a hero. I am a man with a folder. It is enough. Would you have confronted him at the restaurant or done what I did and let paper do the talking? If your partner took from a college fund to help their secret, is there any apology that would put that money back in your heart? If you want more stories like this, stick around and subscribe.